deeply discuss, especially that is depending upon the speed and the processing and the performance to be loading. These are the factors that will affect the processing. So the factor distributing the processing and the networks, we are deeply discussed on the efforts on the finite process speed, limitation on intratic performance. Third one is the network computing. Here, especially we have discussed that what are the faults occur in the system. The faults are occur due to the speed only. The speed that may be of either too large or too fast. Why the problem occur at all? Here the problem occur at all due to the especially the slow processing only. Here that is especially we are studied in the operating system bottleneck problem also. That is so while we uploading the file or we are downloading we have to access the application, especially it takes some time. So in that case, user doesn't know whether the process is running or misleading interpreted. Here the process is not loading. So that again the same user again load the same form several times, or they give the multiple input several times. In that case, that is a problem occur. Especially we have the third part. I can say that the icon mode we have usually feel in the Windows systems. The user give the input or click the mouse several times. So that multiple processing are to be running. So the system cannot able to tolerate. So here in that case, the system goes to the blurriness. So we are following that that is system is going to be hang. So these are the faults we have to see. So here now we have to see what are the limitations of interactive performance. I discussed only the computation bond, storage channel bond, graphics bond. Last one we discussed the network capacity. Here the computation bond, simply I tell what is the computation bond. Here the delay occur. The delay occur, the user doesn't know here the process is going on. So we need what at least we in between that we collect some message tab. Wait for 20 seconds. Wait for few seconds. Then user alert. They will understand the situation. They will wait. That is the thing. Or otherwise we have to change the cursor. Changing the cursor indication. Here the process is running. So these are the identification notable in the computation bond. The next one is the storage channel bond. That is the computation based on the computation power. Memory accessing has to be done. That is the storage channel bond. Here the graphics bond. Some of the tools ought to be highly graphical package. So in order to access that particular file, we need some clever coding technique. There is a smart algorithm at that. In addition to that, special purpose graphics are also used. Then only we can access the video file easily. We can run any other application like that. That is the graphics bond. Here the network capacity. I told in the previous class. Here everyone using your own laptop or own PC, they are utilizing the resource. Here my document is to be shared to all. So here in the shared, especially the network capacity is to be large compared to the several individual as a working load. That is the thing. That is the network capacity. The speed of the network. So we have to access such file. It can be said that the speed of the network rather than the memory, which limits performance. That is networking computing. Especially we have discussed the third, allowing the desktop computer to access the resource. Every server doesn't bother about the number of persons. So it doesn't bother. Here I'm taking class, my document, my PPT is shared to all. Here also doesn't bother about the number of students. There's so many students accessing my document well. So the computing power is to be high. The memory are only part of the story. Then only traffic can be easy enabled. Sorry, traffic can be reduced. Here we have to access the information or highly segment to the individual or group and institution. That is the thing. That is the main agenda of the network computing. Next year, here in this class, we are going to discuss that is the interaction. The interaction. What is the interaction? At least two participants involved, and I am communicating to you. Me and at least one other opponent is there. So here also there is interaction. I'm taking class in my place. You are also visiting in your home. That is the thing. That is the total nearly there is more than 100 students. Here the interaction taken place between you, me and you. Here also the process involved, the interaction taken place between the user and system. So the user in that case, the proper interface has to be done. Then only the interaction can be successful. The interaction taken place between the user and system. Here in the case, proper interface must be done. Then only the interaction to be successful. So here some of the cases, the translation can be failed due to number of points. We have to note down. So we are better than we have to understand the models of interaction. What is going on? Then only we can identify what are difficulties faced in the interaction. What is going on? What the process is going on? Then only we are understand what are difficulty facing. Now we are going to see the one by one difficulty facing. One is a Norman interaction, Norman execution evolution cycle, interaction framework. Especially explain the Norman execution evolution cycle. Some steps are there. That question frequently asked in the unit exam. Explain the steps involved in the execution evolution cycle in Norman. So many times the question asked. Now the Norman execution evolution. Here the interaction that can be specified in terms of domain, task, and goal. Interaction that can be specified in terms of domain, task, and goal. The purpose of interacting system is to aid the user to accomplish a goal from some application domain. So that is what is the domain? I want to accomplish the goal. That is the domain. Here the task. Here the task, that means what is here the task? That is the what? The work has to be finished. That is the task. Here the domain also specifies the area of expertise and knowledge in some real world activity. Here the task, the work has to be finished. That is the task. That is we can say the operation to manipulate the concept of a domain. Operation or manipulate the concept of a domain. Here domain. What is the goal? That is desired output. Here also, I am taking class to you. You are in some other way. That is here also my intention. I want to convey the concept and topic is to be reached to all. It should be accepted by all. That is the thing. So here the domain. So the domain here the domain. I have to prepare the good PPT presentation. I have to deliver the good content. What is the task involved? That is I want to give the slide presentation well. And then I want to review the topic in a well-designed manner. What is the goal? That is satisfaction. It should be acceptable by board. That is the goal. That is the domain, task, and goal involved. That is in terms of interaction. Here in between that we have noted down the intention. Here the intention specific action required to meet the goal. Here the task analysis involves the identification of the problem space for the user. Identification of the problem space for the user and an interactive system in terms of the domain, goals, intention, and task. Here the identification of the problem spaces. So here the interaction has to be taken place. We have to identify what the problem space for the user. So the concept used in the design of the system and the description of the user are separate. The concept used in the design of the system and the description of the user are separate. Then only we can refer the distinct components. That means we have to understand what is the system scenario, what are the system involved. That is we have to note down. And the description of the user that ought to be separate. So we have to refer them as distinct components. Next one is here also interaction. Especially the system language ought to be involved. Especially I can say that is one the core language, another one the user language. What is the core language? What is the user language? User language, I can say it as a task language. Core language. Core language, that is, it describes the computational attribute of the domain relevant to the system state. It describes the computational attribute of the domain relevant to the system state. Here, what are the tools we are going to be interact? That is the core language. Here in the task language, the psychological attribute of domain relevant to the user state. Here the task language. So here using the tool, I'm going to demonstrate, that is the core language. Here, what are the things I have to take in account I have to express way to the user. That is the task language. Here the core language, that is tool that can be referred, that can be used. That is the core language. Here in the task language, here the psychological attribute. So what are the measures, what are the delivery content I'm going to express to the user. That is the task language. That is the thing. So these are the future, that's the execution. Here the execution and the evolution cycle. Here in the last class I also told you the difference between the execution and evolution. Execution. Here the work, I have finished the work according to the condition, according to the constraint, just I finished the work. That is the execution. Evolution. Whether the work is satisfied all the criteria according to the condition. Whether the finished work has satisfied all the criteria according to the condition. That is the evolution. That is the execution. That's one of the evolution. You are also facing the thing. You are doing project. You have successfully finished the project. You have successfully finished the work. But what is the intention? What is the aim? What is the evolution? Whether the project has successfully reached 100% or not. Whether the program has successfully fulfilled 100% or not. That is the evolution. Here also, the Norman, the model of interaction, that is what? Understanding of the interaction between the human user and the system. So we are not on what the interaction, we have to understand the scenario between the human user and the system. So here the part of the plan or full plan ought to be executed. User observe the user computer interface to evaluate the result of the execution plan. The user here observe the computer interface to evaluate the result of the executed plan. That is the thing. User observe the computer interface to evaluate the result of the executed plan. That is the thing. That's the intention. So that only it can be determined further more future action. Especially two phases important, that is execution and the evolution are the major thing involved in the interaction. So especially here the normal execution, the process, normal execution and the evolution, they are going, the work has to be going into further stages, especially 7 stages. Explain this beautiful thing. What are the stages? Explain the stages involved in the normal models of interaction. This is this is an important topic in the interaction. 2 times asked in the university. Explain the models of interaction in the execution and the evolution cycle. So at least we have to note down all the 7 points. So don't forget the 7 points at any time. What is the what are things we have to discuss? Establishing goal, forming the intention, specifying the action sequence, executing the action, perceiving the system state, interpreting the system state, last one, the evaluating the system state with respect to the goal and intention. That is the 7 major points we discussed. Here, especially establishing goal, we have to understand what is the criteria to what is the output product that determine, forming the intention, forming the work progress. We have to analyze the work progress, specifying the action sequence. We have to note down the specific sequence of action notable. That is the proper implementation. Yeah, that is a proper sequence action ought to be followed. Executing the action, a proper implementation has to be done. Perceiving the system state. Perceiving the system state Then what we have to evaluate the output. That is it should satisfy all the condition criteria. That is the perceiving system state. Next one is interpreting the system state. Interpreting that is what the goal as reach or not. That is we have to interpret. Next, evaluating the system state with respect to the goals and intention. So totally 7 stages are there in the normal models of interaction. So they'll ask, especially this question they ask 6 marks, especially the HCI, even the university exam, so many split up questions they will ask. Some question they will ask directly 13 marks, they will ask 6 marks, 7 marks, or what 5 plus 4 plus 4, 3 divisions also there. So we have to note down this question they will ask. Explain what are the 7 stages involved in the normal model of interaction. That is normal model of interaction, especially for execution and evolution are divided into 7 stages. Execution and evolution are divided into several 7 stages. That's only I put up the 7 stages in the PPT. That is the execution evolution model referred by the Norman. Next one is here the model demonstrates some interface cause problem. Here we already knows I told the difference between the execution and evolution. I told that is well about the execution and the evolution. Here I can get the gulf of execution. What is here the gulf of execution, gulf of evolution? The 2 major concerns we have to note down. The execution evolution cycle. The gulf of execution. The difference between the user formation of the action to reach the goal and the action allowed by the system. The difference between the user formulation of the action to reach the goal and the action allowed by the system. Here that is the execution. So here the execution has to be properly successful. That is what here the system allowed my program to be run successful. That is the execution. This corresponding to the intent by the user. So here the proper interface has to be done. Then only it will reduce some gulf. The system allowed my program to be executed in a well decent manner. Here that is the gulf of execution. Next one is about gulf of evolution. What is the gulf of evolution? The difference between the physical presentation of the system state and expectation of the user. So here my execution has to be done well. Next thing, whether my execution evolution plan has fulfilled the user needs or fulfill the customer needs. They will satisfy the customer or user, satisfy my execution. That is the evolution. So the user can user only evaluate the presentation, evaluate the execution. User, the people, customer, that is evaluate the execution in terms of goal and in terms of goal only. Because in terms of goal, that is their expectation. The user want to evaluate the execution in terms of goal. The goal refers to what? That is the user expectation, customer expectation. So that is the gulf of evolution. The more effort that is required on the part of the user to interpret the presentation, less effective the interaction. That is the thing. So to be user to interpret the presentation, well, that is important. That is more important. Next, what are the advantages of referring the normal execution evolution cycle? So here the normal model is useful means of understanding. So understanding the interaction in a way that is clear and intuitive, but it does not attempt to deal with the system communication to the interface. Why first thing what that is why we go here why we go for the normal execution? That means what? We have to understand the scenario. We have to understand the interaction, the process is going on, how the process is going on, how the interaction has to be taken place. We have to clearly know. Then only you can deal with that system communication well. That is the advantage of normal execution evolution cycle. We have to understand the interaction, what is going on in a clear way. Then only we can have a clear idea. We have to deal with the system communication in a clear, decent manner. That is the advantage of normal execution evolution cycle. Especially here in the normal execution cycle, what are things, especially we are known on the 7 stages, followed by the Gulf of execution and the evolution, and then we go for the advantage. So especially we are now familiar about the execution evolution cycle. Very important thing, especially 7 stages in the normal model is very important topic. We are discussed. Next, again the models of interaction. Models interaction framework we are going to be discussed. Here the interaction, here in the beginning what we discussed, normal execution evolution, that topic discussed. Now the second topic is what? Interaction framework. Interaction framework in this class, second topic. So here the interaction framework. So it determines the realistic description of the interaction. Interaction framework determines the realistic description of the interaction. What is the real scenario? That is the thing we have to note down. Especially what is the thing? Here also, especially the process that means what? Input, output. In between that what? Some manipulation function is there. That manipulation function we have to give the input, the output has to be taken place. So here also the 4 components are to be mapped in the interactive system. These are the important 2 marks question. What are the 4 components ought to be represent the interactive system? One is the system, user, input and output. System, user, input and output. The 4 components involved in the interactive system. Don't forget at any time. System, user, input and output. So all the 4 components can have its own language. Especially, even though I can give the input, but input that should be in some specific instructions also, specific commands also. So that instruction, that command I can notable as a language. Okay. Here in addition to that, that is task language and system. You are already in the previous slide also told the difference between the task language and system core language. What are the tools? What are the tools are referred that are going to be interpreted? That is the system. That is about core language. Here, what is the task language? The method of delivery or content to the user. That is a task language. So the input and output are combined together to form an interface, proper interface. So okay, here the proper interface as then, that means what? Yes, I can give the predictable input, I can get the correct output. So the interface sits between the user and the system. There are 4 steps involved in the interaction cycle. So here the interface taken place between the user and system. 4 steps are taken down. We have to note down the 4 steps. What are the 4 steps? That's only here I can say in the interactive cycle. The only way the user can manipulate the machine is through the input. So the task must be articulated with the input language. So the input I can give, the input that refer to the instruction or some commands. So what here that is saying, listen. So here what? There are 4 steps involved in the interactive cycle. We have discussed that input language, system transformation. System is in a new state. 4th one is the current value of the system. Input language, the system has to perform transformation. The system is in the new state. 4th one is the current value of the system attribute. Okay, listen. In between that, I tell one thing. I will give today afternoon. I will send the beautiful PPT presentation to your group mail ID. Please go through it. It's a clear, good structured way. You have to understand the easy. You have to understand the concept in an easy manner. Okay. So here the input language is translated into the core language as operations to be performed by the system, input language. So I can give some instruction or command, that is the language I can refer, then here the system can perform. That is the thing. The system that transforms itself or disguise some operation. So that the system accepts my input and transform and perform some execution. That is the thing. So then it goes to the system. Then the system goes to the new state. Then only it is communicate to the communicate to the user. So here the fourth step, the current value of the system attribute are rendered as concept or future of the output. The input are given to the system, then the system goes to new state. That's system attribute are concerned as a concept or futures of the output. So so especially user to observe the output and assess the result of the interaction. Especially here, what is the evolution? Evolution, that means execution. The output, I got the output, that's the execution. But evolution, the user assesses the output and in the interactive relative way to the original code. Okay. So here there are four main translations involved in the interaction: articulation, performance, presentation, and observation. Articulation, performance, presentation, and observation. So each and every component can have its own language. Language, what is the thing? One is the core language, next one is the task language. So now we can discuss the four translation one by one. In between that we have to discuss that is the thing. What are four steps involved in the interactive cycle? So there are four steps. There are four components there. One is the articulation, performance, presentation, and observation. From articulation to performance, performance to presentation. What are steps involved? So here also the input output to put together to get the good interface. So here this slide shows what are the four steps involved in the interactive cycle. One is input, manipulation, translation, and execution. Here the four steps is also what do you need? Yeah, that is the thing. Articulation, performance, presentation, observation. The four components are there. In between the four components, several steps ought to be taken there. That's several steps. I can say that what? Input, manipulation, translation, execution. Translation. First one is the input. User begins the interactive cycle with the formulation of the goal and the task to achieve that goal. User begins with the interaction cycle with the formulation of the goal and the task to achieve that goal. That is the input. Here the manipulation. The user accesses the input and to perform some operation. That is the manipulation. That is manipulate the machine. It's through the input. So input, I told no. That is a set of instructions or some commands. Here the translation. So input language, the input are accepted by the machine. So the input language translated into some core language. Then only the machine can perform some operation. I give the input that may be of either some instruction or command. That command accepted by the machine. So that command or instruction can be converted into some core language. Then only the system perform operation. You already knows. Next, when the last that the execution. The system then transform itself as described by the operation. So the execution phase of the cycle is complete and the evolution phase begins. Here the four steps are there. These four steps are notable in the translation: articulation, performance, presentation, and observation. From one component to another component, I can refer four steps. That four steps are told in the previous slide. Here the first thing, here is the articulation. The use of formulation of the desired task to achieve some goal needs to be articulated in the input language. Here what? So the response of the user, they need to be transformed to string. So what do you think articulation? I can give the input. I can say the set of instructions, set of commands. That should be well and good. That is the thing. So here then only it will reach the goal. Or else I can give some misinterpreted instruction or misinterpreted command, not able to get the correct goal, not give the correct goal. So the task or the response of the user and then need to translate to stimuli for the input. Okay, that is here the task is faced in terms of certain psychological attributes that highlight the important features of the domain for the user. Next one is the performance. Second component, that is the performance. Response of the input and translate to stimuli for the translated to stimuli. That means what? That is the some core language for the system. Here the translated input can reach as many states of the system. Here the translation has to be done. My input as accepted by the system. Here it should be here the translated input it can convert into the using the core language it can be converted to it can perform some operation. That is the translated input language can reach as many states, several states, active state. You are already studying the operating system that the abort state, active state. So many states are in the 5 states they are studied in the OS during the process. Yeah, that state only they are told that is the performance. Once the state transition has occurred within the system, the execution phase of the interaction is complete and the evolution phase begins. Execution has completed. Now I'm going to for the evolution. Next one, that's the third component and the presentation. The new state of the system must be communicated to the user and then begin by translating the system performance to the transition into stimuli for the output component. The new state of the system must be communicated. Once I already told in the previous slide also, once I give the input, that input received by the machine and performs some operation, then the system goes into the new state. So then only it can be communicated to the user. Here also, while I give some instruction to the PC, some processing has to be done, then I can get some new application. Then only then the response I can to the me. Here that is the thing. Here also the presentation, that is the presentation translation must preserve the relevant system attribute from the domain to the limited expressive of the output device. The presentation translation must preserve. Okay. So the last one is the observation. So I give the input, processing has to be taken place, output and the execution is there. Next is what? Last the execution, after that we go for what? Evolution. That is what? That is the response from the output. Whether that is the execution is fulfilled or not. So the response from the output is translated to the stimuli for the user. Excuse me. Okay. The observation translation will address the areas and coverage of the final translation. Next one is that is the thing we have discussed in the interaction framework. They will ask explain about the modes of interaction. Explain the modes of interaction. Especially I designed the interaction framework. What are the 4 components involved? System, user, input and output. Later on I discussed that is the later on discussed that is the 4 components. The 4 components, one component to the another component. Several steps are taken upon.